Let's continue in the Lucid Word. The author says, Section 9, occurrences which necessitate Istinja and clarifying its conditions. It is an obligation to make Istinja, yani to perform Istinja with purifying water. Purifying means renders other things pure. Renders other things pure. What does that mean? Yani, what gets rendered pure? A surface will get rendered pure. A surface, yani, like something that you pour water upon. So, pure from what? Pure from one of two things, actually. If you're talking about something physical, then we're talking about pure from filth, physical filth. Like feces, urine, blood, etc. But if we're talking about something religious that's confirmed for the organs, a judgment that's confirmed for the organs, a religious judgment, then that's called hadath, and that's the religious impurity, that we'll just call it impurity. So we'll say filth and impurity, inshallah. Filth is the physical najasa, not just dirt or mud or dust. When I say filth, I mean najasa. And when I say impurity, I mean hadath, the religious impurity. So it says here, it is an obligation to make istinja with purifying water. Purifying. So, okay, purifying water means water that renders things pure. Renders things pure means you're going to pour the water on something, and either you're going to be removing the filth, the physical filth, or you're going to be lifting the impurity, the religious impurity. Okay. But why do we need this qualifier here? Purifying. Why isn't it enough just to say, it is an obligation to make istinja with water? Isn't that what we do? Yes, because the water could be purifying, or it might not be purifying. How would the water not be purifying? There's different ways the water could not be purifying. Like if you use it already for purification. Or if you used it already, or if it's changed. Or if it's changed drastically. If you use it already, or if it's changed drastically. So then someone might say, if it's used already or if it's changed. Okay, if it's changed drastically, I can see that. So it's not like regular plain pure water. So it's not going to purify. Like I wouldn't use orange juice to purify a spot, or milk or something else to purify a spot. So if it's changed drastically, sure. But used, because if I use water, like just pour it over something, then still just water. So what changed? Like let's say I made wudu with some water, and I collected all that water, an obligatory wudu, or an obligatory ghusl, and I collected this water. And then there was a spot of najasa somewhere on a surface. So then I took this water that I collected and poured it over this spot. And all the najasa goes away. And there's no smell, and there's no color, and there's no taste, there's no body of filth. So, is this spot purified? Who knows the answer to that? Is such a spot purified? Correct answer. Correct answer. The spot is not purified. Barakallahu fikum. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So someone said it's cleaned though. Okay. Or you might say cleared. It's clear. It's cleared away. Is it still contaminated with najasa though? Is it contaminated? 5, 4, 3, 2. Correct answer. It is contaminated because that's the point of saying that it wasn't purified. Correct. Okay. So then it's clear. He says, it is an obligation to make istinja with purifying water when one wants to perform prayer. Whenever any moist, that means wet, substance, which soils the outlet, is emitted. Soils means stains. And this is not a qualifier here, this is just a clarifier. That's not a qualifier. Whenever any moist substance, which is going to be something that soils the outlet, is emitted from any of the eliminatory outlets, i.e. the penis, vulva, and anus. This is the case whether the emitted substance is usual like urine or unusual like blood. Anything wet that comes from the front or back private parts, except for the mani, as you know. Here, the emission of a non-moist substance does not make istinja obligatory to perform, since it does not soil the outlet. So that's going to be like gas or something that is completely dry. Like if a person, because of being sick, released dry feces. Istinja is an obligation for all moist substances. So what's the deal with moisture? Why is moisture or wetness being targeted here? There's a signal to it here, which is what it says, which soils the outlet. But we could say another way too. It's because wetness sticks. It's sticky. That means it transfers. So istinja is an obligation for all moist substances with the exception of mani. Because why? Because mani is pure according to the Shafi'i school. Istinja is not obligatory if mani is emitted because it is pure. Istinja is satisfied. Now, one thing can do here is use pronoun. Let's have here. The emission of a non-moist substance does not make istinja obligatory to perform, since it does not soil the outlet. Next sentence. Istinja is an obligation, etc. Next sentence. Istinja is not obligatory, period. Next sentence. Istinja. So at some point here, you definitely want to use the pronoun, like the second time onwards, or the second and third time, and then maybe you can bring back the original word again, but not like this. I mean, maybe it's repeated in the Arabic, so they just kept saying the word because it's in the Arabic text. But if you wanted smooth English, then you want to put some pronouns there instead. It says, Istinja is satisfied when the waste is removed by using one of two things. One, a pure and purifying water until that area, i.e. the penis, vulva, or anus, becomes pure. The area attains purity when the najis entity and its attributes are removed. Or two, by wiping that area 3 times, not less, or more than 3 times. If the area did not become pure with, by 3 wipes. All right. Here, it says, Istinja is satisfied, fulfilled, done, when the waste, the najasa that came out, because as a rule, anything wet from the private parts is najasa. From the private parts in particular. You might get moisture from your eyes, does your tears, or moisture from your nose, and you sweat. For example, a woman, she can excrete the milk. But what comes from, any moisture that comes from the private parts is najasa, except mani, according to the Shafi'i school. So, Istinja is satisfied when the waste is removed, the najasa is removed, by using one of 2 things. One of them, the first one, it says, is pure and purifying water. Okay. Now we just talked about purifying water, and that's clear for us. Now here, though, the word pure got added. Pure and purifying. So, in brief words, to say this, pure and purifying water, that's for clarity. That's for extra and additional clarity, because if you say purifying only, that would already mean it's pure. You can't have purifying water without it being pure in the first place. Pure means not najis, not filthy. You could have pure water that's not purifying. That's what we already clarified. But you can't have purifying water that's not pure. So mentioning pure with purifying is just for additional clarity. Until that area, i.e. the penis, vulva, or anus, becomes pure. Becomes pure from filth, from najasa. Because now you are literally removing filth, literally removing filth. It's like when you're lifting the filth from a table or from clothing or from any area. You are now removing completely the body of the filth by this water. So then, since you're using water, it's a condition that you pour the water until the area is pure, devoid of najasa. The area attains purity when the najis entity and its attributes are removed. Its attributes, which are, what are the attributes of najasa? Firstly, give me a number. Who can give me a number? Don't give me a name, just a number. How many? Yes, 3, correct. So what are those attributes of najasa? Taste, smell, and color, correct. Smell, taste, and color, correct. So, the area attains purity when the najis entity and its attributes are removed completely. Volume is the body of the najasa itself. So it's the volume that has the smell, taste, or color. Or 2, by wiping that area 3 times, not less. That's clear. Now imagine a person, when you said to them, by wiping that area 3 times, not less. Some people, they have a question here. Their question would be, So not two times. So if you can stand to not be that one, if you can be not that one, then don't be that one. Only unless for some reason you have to ask this question. Like you already know the answer and you're making a point or something. So by wiping that area 3 times, not less, or more than 3 times if the area did not become pure with 3 wipes. Why not ask that question here? Or by wiping that area 3 times, not less. So someone would say, so not 2 times? Because the answer to that question is yes or no. So if it's, yeah, you can do 2 times, then that means that the original statement is just false in the first place. So then why would you ask the question? If, tell you. The wiping is done with an object that is pure. Therefore, it is not sufficient to use an object which is intrinsically najis. Yani, it is itself najis, like dry deer feces, such as solid dry dung, or an object which is contaminated with something najis, such as a rock soiled with najis. The object must also be solid. Therefore, neither a liquid substance such as rose water nor a moist substance such as a wet piece of cloth is sufficient. There's something here. The object must be solid, correct, jamid. Therefore, neither a liquid substance such as rose water or something else, milk, juice, etc., or oil, olive oil, or some other liquid, that's not sufficient. It says here, nor a moist substance such as a wet piece of cloth. I just have a slight issue here because a wet piece of cloth is itself it's solid. The cloth itself is solid. And so then the issue is that you can't use it because it's moist. So then this is a different issue then. We talk about it being solid. The solidity is there. The first example is fine because it's liquid. The object must also be solid. Therefore, a liquid won't work unless it's water. Then they said, nor a moist substance, such as a wet piece of cloth. It's solid, though. But there is another example. So I don't know about this example for myself. Probably they took that from the books or something. It's just something that's not explained for me. La, solid, jamid doesn't mean not wet though. Something could be jamid, it's still going to be wet. We're explaining the meaning of the condition of solidity. Unless there's something here, those sheikhs, they studied a lot of things, so. But it's not immediate link for me. The moisture is the issue. Why you can't use this wet piece of cloth because of the moisture. But as for the solidity, it's present in the cloth. So dry is a different condition. Dry is one thing. Let me say it this way. Dryness is one meaning. Solidity, Jumud is something, unless there's a meaning of something in the Jumud, solidity or frozenness, that's not clear for me, or that I don't know about. And Jafaf, dryness, that's another thing. But there is another example that I know besides a liquid other than water, and it's not considered solid, which is a clump of dirt that can easily crumble. Like if you could pick it up and it's like one thing, but if you just squeeze it a little bit or apply some pressure, it will crumble. You can't use something like that for istinja. This is not solid. Lastly, the object must be unrespectable and adequate for the removal of najis filth. Therefore, it is not permissible nor is it sufficient to perform istinja with what is religiously respectable, such as Islamic books, yani religious papers, or what is sought for food by humans, like bread and what is similar. So, two things: religious papers and human food. Those are respectable. You can't use those for istinja. And bones, you cannot use those for istinja. Either they're going to be najasa, or Allah puts meat on the bones for Muslim jinn, so you can't make istinja with those if it's not a najis bone. Also, it is not sufficient with an object that is not adequate for the removal of the filth, like glass, bamboo, and loose soil. There's one. Loose soil. So what I know that's there. It's not jamid. Yani, this one here. Also, it is not sufficient with an object that is not adequate. So we say not adequate. That's open. For the removal of filth, like glass. What makes glass inadequate, though? It's too smooth. Bamboo, the same thing. It's too smooth. And loose soil, why? Because it's not solid. All these things that we mentioned are not adequate for istinja for different reasons. The solid, dry dung. Why? It's not adequate because it's najasa. But look here. Solid and dry. They said both words next to each other. They don't mean the same thing. You can't use a liquid other than water. It's not adequate. Why? Because it's not a purifier. Can't use Islamic books or human food. Why? Because it's respectable. Can't use glass or bamboo. Why? Because it's too smooth. That means you need something with a grip that has some amount of roughness to it so that it has a grip. It says an object such as stone or paper satisfies all four conditions. As for the stone, one brother said to me, I don't understand. How are stones good for istinja? So I said to him, it means you never tried it then. What's better to satisfy your curiosity but to see for your own eyes or with your own eyes? Wiping the soiled outlet is carried out until the area becomes clean, even if a trace that can only be removed with water or small pieces of clay remains. Yani, here, going back to the stone thing, if you want, just get some stones and take them home with you. And you can make istinja in the privacy of your own home with the stone if you want, just so you can see how it works. Yani, using stones is going to be, probably a man's going to be doing that more, because you know why. But just so that if you're curious, Yani. You said, since some stool or feces exit with different densities, how does one assess what's left after wiping? Whether it can be removed by water only. That's easy, because if he would wipe, if it's something that can only be removed with water, that means if he wipes there, nothing comes off. So if he wipes there and something comes off, means then he has to keep going. It has to go until whatever's left could only be removed by water. You say even if it has something like diarrhea, or else it's going to leave some diarrhea there. He has to. The rule is you have to, if you're using water, if you're not using water, you have to remove everything until the only thing that's left could only be removed with water. That's it. Or small pieces of clay. I mean, wafiq. I haven't seen those small pieces of clay to give you a description. So here, what you're gonna do, just say it just like that. That's how you took it by talaqi. Then, without you having seen it, and having familiarity with it, just transfer the information authentically. So you would say to the person, while you have no idea about those small pieces of clay, that can only be removed with water or small pieces of clay. And you don't know. Maybe you're going to transfer that knowledge to someone who has complete idea about that. So, an object such as stone or paper satisfies all four conditions. Wiping the soiled outlet is carried out until the area becomes clean. That means clear. Cleared of najasa doesn't mean pure. Here, when we give these lessons about purification, we're going to make a difference between clean and pure. Now we're talking about istinja. If you did one wipe, if you did 3 wipes, if you did all the wipes, then you cleaned it. You removed the bulk, and you didn't leave anything that couldn't be removed by other than water or small pieces of clay. So it's clean, but it's not tahir until you pour the water. What's similar to that? What's similar to that is a menstruating woman whose bleeding paused. Her bleeding paused. So she's menstruating while her bleeding paused? Yes, she's still menstruating. It only paused. So she's now, what then? Maybe you'll say she's clean, maybe. Or you'll say she's clear because she's not at the moment actively bleeding, but she's still inside her 15 days. So she's not tahir. So that's similar. So then, any prayer she does, any fasting she does during that intermission right there, it's not going to be valid because really, she's still menstruating. This wiping is valid even if water is present. Yani, you don't have to use water even if you have it. You can still wipe, provided the moist najis filth does not move or become dry. That's interesting translation here. Does not move. I like that. Maybe that now just expanded my comprehension of the case. Yani, it says here, this wiping is valid even if water is present. Okay, that's clear. Provided the moist najis filth does not move. Okay. The way that's worded right there, what does that mean? That means, say the najasa came out from its place and it ran to some distance, but still inside of its limit. Still inside of its limit, like the head of the penis. That's its limit. Or like the inner plates of the buttocks. Didn't get to the outside. That's its limit. It's still inside its limit. So something came out and still inside of its limit, though, didn't get outside of its limit. Because if it gets outside of its limit, you're going to have to use water on whatever went beyond its limit. So, okay, this one that's still inside its limit, you can wipe it. Okay, that's clear, inshallah. But it says here, with the condition that it doesn't move. So what does that mean? What that means is, although it's still in its limit, it got to some extent, right? So once it got to some extent, and it didn't go past its limit, that means it stopped. It's not flowing. It's not moving. So if it stopped there and it doesn't move past there, wherever it stopped at, then you can wipe this. But basically, what this statement means is, but if it smears, that's the way that statement means, the way it's worded here. If it smears, you're going to have to use water. But yeah, that means even still inside of its limit. That means even still inside its limit. Okay. The smearing part is what I didn't think about before. But what I know, the way I know the rule is, if the najasa comes out from its place and it's still within its limit and it stopped at some point inside its limit, then you can wipe it. If it flows again, if it flows anew after it stopped, then you have to use water, even still inside the limit. But that didn't occur to me that that's smearing. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. So we'll double check this case just so we can be very sure how does that work. So what I know for sure, what I've learned, and the way I'm saying it for you, this is what I know. The najasa comes from its place, flows to some, gets to some spot within its limit, and then stops, then you can wipe this. And then if it flows again after that, then you have to use water, even still inside of its limit. Because there's a difference between smearing and flowing again. Because could smear without flowing again. So we'll check that out, insha'Allah ta'ala. So if any of that happens to you, then if you're able to, be safe and just use water. Insha'Allah ta'ala. If that happened to you, I'm saying. I'm not saying be safe and use water all the time. Wiping is fine. The Prophet used to, alayhi salatu wassalam. And the Sahaba used to. Let's see what we have here. So this wiping is valid even if water is present, provided the moist najis does not move. Or become dry. Or become dry, that's clear. If it dried, you have to use water. Because if it's dry, then wiping it doesn't matter because it's dry. And you can't wipe it with something wet if it's dry. Once it's dry, you have to use water. If you wipe it with something wet, then for sure you're going to smear it. That's for sure. That's not going to be valid. If the emitted substance moves from where it initially settled, that's what I was just talking about, to a separate spot, then using water is required for the separated substance. I want some clarity for that statement there. If the emitted substance that moved from where it first settled remained coalescent, then water is also required for its removal. Coalescent, I don't even know what that means. Let's see. Coalescence, the act of growing together, the act of uniting by natural affinity or attraction, the state of being united. It says, okay, I see. If the emitted substance that moved from where it first settled remained coalescent, it stayed there, then water is also required for its removal. Whereas, if the emitted substance did not become separated, nor did it move from where it reached and initially settled, nor did urine or similar waste spread past the glands of a man or the orifice of the vagina of a woman, nor did feces spread past the natal cleft, i.e., the line of contact between the buttocks when standing. Interesting. Then using stone or the like is sufficient. If it spreads beyond these areas or it dries, then water must be used. Okay. All right, it's clear. It has nice details in it. MashaAllah. So, here. So, let's start from here. This wiping is valid even if water is present. Yes. Provided the moist najis filth does not move. They're going to clarify that. Or become dry. Yes, that's clear. If the emitted substance moves from where it initially settled to a separate spot, then using water is required for the separated substance. So an example would be nice here. Maybe Shaykh Yusuf's footnotes has example there. If the emitted substance that moves from where it first settled, if the emitted substance that moved from where it first settled remained coalescent, yani cohesive, then water is also required for its removal. Same thing here. An example would be nice there. Whereas if the emitted substance did not become separated, nor did it move from where it reached, that's the one I was telling you about. It didn't move, didn't flow again after it stopped. Nor did it move from where it reached and initially settled. Nor did urine or similar waste spread past the glands of a man, because like we just said, that's the limit for the man's front. That's, so whatever goes beyond there must have water. Whatever stays within that limit, you can wipe it. Or the orifice of the vagina of a woman, that's where the man's organ enters. So if the urine goes past there, then she definitely has to use water. Nor did feces spread past the natal cleft, i.e. the line of contact between the buttocks when standing. Yeah, that's clear. So if anything got to the outside of that, so it means on the outside of the buttocks, then you have to use water. If none of that were the case, then using stone or the like is sufficient. If it spreads beyond these areas or it dries, then water must be used. Also, for your information, there are three outlets, or three pathways, I'm sorry. There are three pathways for a human. Three pathways. Some scholars said at least. I don't know if it's consensus. 2 for the front, 1 for the back. For the back, that's clear. For the front, how's there 2 pathways for the front? Because there's 1 pathway for the seminal fluid and there's 1 pathway for the urine. The issue here, though, is that for the man, they both come out at the end from the same spot. For the woman, those 2 don't come out from the same spot. The urine and the ejaculated fluid. So just for your clarity there, because what we're going to say, there's 2 genders. So each gender has 2 private parts, a front and a back. Some scholars said, yes, that's all true. But actually, though, there's 3 pathways, though, between these 2, this front and this back. There's 3 pathways. For the man, they will converge. And for the woman, they don't converge. طيب. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. We'll stop there. Any question?
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. I have a question.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yes.
Two questions though. Well, first one is this one. I hear anything about the solid things which one should use and one should not use. If someone in the woods using the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
urinate, got a little bit of tissue, he used it through that would be sufficient enough, but he done with that, or she done with that, and still some more urine coming out that person.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing around that person. Could a person use a leaf?
Yes, it probably will be fine
No.
if it's not too smooth.
Okay. Now, what
Now,
question?
what could happen? Let's say he didn't have anything that's adequate. We said a couple things like glass and cane and things like that. So if he has something that's not adequate and he used it and he got the body of the filth off of him, let's say the only thing he had was he for some reason he wanted to use a deer feces. He knew it was najasa. He said, if I don't use this, I'm gonna get the najasa on my clothes. And so that's the decision he made. I'm not saying whether it's lawful or not. Just paint the scenario here. So he made this decision, and then he wiped that with this, which is not adequate. And in the process, what he did was he actually did lift the bulk of the filth off of him. Now, he's not going to stain his clothing now. So we know it's clear here that his istinja is not valid. Meaning, he can't pray yet. But since he removed the bulk, then all that's left for him is to pour water. Mm.
Okay, got that. Now, excuse me. The second question is, think, let me say this. You just correct me. I heard that moisture from the private parts, even one sweats, is najasa.
No, no, that's not the case. So the moisture that exits from the private parts is going to be najasa. That which comes out from the private parts, that's not sweat. Now, yeah, and sweat's going to come from the pores of his skin. When the person makes istinja by wiping, and then he leaves something that could only be removed with water or small pieces of clay, and that's permissible. It could be, though, that now this person might sweat, and this sweat might liquefy that stain that he left that was permissible for him to leave and make it spread. Then what's the judgment of that? The answer here is that's excused. That's overlooked. Still, yani, it's still excused. It remains excused. Because the sweat of the private area is not foreign to the private area. So it's going to stay excused.
You got it. So vertical up.
Amin Wafiq. There's a question. Is there a sunnah way to wipe? Yeah. You take whatever object you're using and you pick the filth up off of yourself with that object without rubbing the same surface back and forth. So basically, in one wipe, you're basically swiping, picking up the najasa off of yourself. You're using that wipe to just grab that najasa and lift it right off of yourself. And then that whole strip, basically, that whole line there of you're picking that najasa up off yourself, that's unusable now. So now you need to turn to another side of the object and then lift again. And then to another side and then lift again. So you have to do 3 times at least. You can't put the same spot back on yourself. Even if, let's say you cleared yourself the first time, you literally lifted all the body of the najasa off of yourself in the first wipe. But you still have to do 2 more just to fulfill the obligation. And when you put the surface down for the second wipe and there's nothing getting picked up, you cannot put that same surface back down for the third wipe. You have to turn it again and put a clean surface for the third wipe, although you cleared yourself on the first wipe. You said after Menses blood terminated, a sister made ghusl and she prayed some makeup prayers or makeup fasting and saw blood again after some time, within 15 days. Does she need to redo those prayers and fasting? They weren't valid because she was still menstruating. So if she has to redo them, depends on her own details about remakes, but they weren't valid. That's what I can say to you. So what size should the stone be? Big enough to lift the najasa. It has to have 3 sides. Yeah, and that's easy. Because it's not going to be a small pea of a rock that's not going to work for you. Saying how big should the stone be is just like saying how much tissue do I need.
Shaykh, in the school of Imam Shafi'i, is it enough to just wipe if no water was available, or if water was available?
Yes, correct. Correct. Whether water is available or not, then it's enough to wipe. In the Shafi'i school. I don't know about other schools.
So is using water sunnah?
Yes. Unless it's obligatory. Either sunnah or obligatory. We already just now, we ended talking about the cases when water's obligatory. Like it dried or it went past its spot. It went past its limit.
Understood. Better close.
Amin wabi. طيب سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك